Okay, where's my best side? Oh, there's my best
Just to look at it. So,
side.
good afternoon, Doug.
Oh,
You're always talking to me about the importance of naming convention and how much how critical it is to the projects that you're on. So today, since
yeah.
you've got a 10-minute break, and I know you're really busy with Boston Scientific, one of our key customers up there, doing some
Yeah.
good work. I wanted to ask for you to tell our audience out there just exactly what you mean by BW naming convention and how you go about creating it. So, go ahead.
Well, a naming convention is a strategy of how you name all the different objects and items in your BW system. And if you're trying to find a variable, it's got a name. And the problem that I ran into was that SAP gives you an initial name in the business content, which I believe the original intent was that's a template that you can use to build your own variables from. But invariably those SAP delivered names, which are based on German, make it into the final project. So the problem is the computer is always sorting a name, whether you want it to or not. It's always sorting. So when it's based on let's say you have a collection of variables all related, and if they're all kind of named randomly based on a German derivation, the computer will sort those variables and scatter them all over the system. That's the basic problem. It just makes it hard to work. So if I need to find a variable, say 10 variables, it'll take about 40 minutes to track down each variable. So that's 40 minutes times 10 variables. That's 400 minutes of
That's
waste
it.
time.
That's if you don't find a naming convention setup that you can work with.
That's right. Now, I've developed a naming convention that that is scalable, that I can roll it out to any number of functional areas. In fact, one of our major military customers had 11 functional areas. Ultimately, had around 15,000 characteristics and key figures, 305 cubes, 1,500 tables, 108 process chains, and it scaled up fine. And for that military complex, they had 30 bases or 5
No.
system that would scale up, but still allow me to find these variables and items in the project when I have problems without spending days and days and days or a week to track down stuff. So the system I came up with literally in 30 seconds, I can walk from one end of the system to another and find what I need to find. So that's the basic system that I've put together.
And in your experience, when you walk into a typical project, you're not finding that.
No, it's just total chaos. Everything's kind of randomly named without any thought of a systematic approach to it all, and that's the real basic problem. People don't really consider how important a name can be, and time is money. And if you're spending time trying to find a variable, rather than fix a problem, well, it's just costing your customer money.
Well, for sure. So,
Right.
what's a typical productivity improvement factor you see when it's naming conventions properly designed and implemented in BW?
Uh, let's say you have a methodical development method down, like I had for the military. Even though I was methodically working, it took 2 days of the development cycle. So when I came up with the naming convention and automated that, my productivity increased by 50%. So in that project, I spent 1 day just developing names, and then the next day actually doing development. So when I cut the naming issue out by automating that through a tool I developed, I doubled my productivity. I spent 2 minutes developing the names. I had a few key inputs to the tool, and then for the next 2 days, I spent 2 days in solid development. So a project that would normally take 4 months now takes 2 months. So, what's the cost of a consultant for 2 months versus 4 months? Well, it's significant, and that's not the only savings. When customers have problems 5 years down the road after you've left, if they can methodically or easily find or understand what you've built because you have a good naming convention put together, it saves them time too. So there's just so many good reasons for having a good methodical, structured naming convention out there. You know, it's just a strategy, it's a philosophy, and all of this I brought from the automotive world. You know, SAP don't tell you how to develop a system. They say, here's the tool, here's what the button does, you figure out how to do it. Well, I figured out how to do it, and I have a very good way of developing software.
And this tool, you say, reduces that from a 2-day process to a 2-minute process once you've figured out your approach.
It does. It literally does. So, and in fact, I made it really simple. Most, you know, the names that you'll be working with that day are laid out. All you do is have a few key inputs like what's my functional area, what's the topic it's talking about, and there's like 4 or 5 inputs, and it will, every item along the development process will tell you, here's the name you're going to use for that variable. Here's the name you're going to use for that, I don't know, whatever it might be, report. Here's the name you're going to use for that table. Here's the name you're going to use for that cube. Here's the name you're going to use for that info package, for that update rule. Everything that you're going to be developing that day, the name will be laid out for you. Now, you have a lot of flexibility. You can give it whatever name you want, but you'd have to reverse engineer the tool that I built and say, well, I want to change it like this. But I've also laid out the tool to be kind of left to right oriented. Here's the first thing you're going to develop, and logically, this is the next thing you're going to do. So it's taking the brain work out of thinking, well, what do I have to do next? I've already laid out, here's what you have to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to that point, here's the name you're going to be using. So it's just copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. So something that you normally spend a lot of brain work trying to figure out, your brain is now relaxed, and you're just copy, paste, copy, paste, following the steps. So there's a lot. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask you something. You've told me this in the past, I believe, but you know, the tool itself has an ability to generate a graphical map of how things are connected and flows together.
Yes.
But why do you say that tool's far from adequate? And what are some of the side effects that you've seen that you have to overcome? Well,
that's really interesting. That's called display data flow forward and back, and you get a little block diagram. But it doesn't give you, it's a timely topic because I just happen to have one of my own right here.
Oh, that's cool.
It doesn't give you...
Hold her still there. Yeah.
Okay.
There's in focus right there.
Got
okay.
It?
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Okay. Now I use, this is kind of like, this is your design, you know. So you reverse engineer what they have, and then you say, okay, how can I improve upon that? But I just use these. This is made in Visio. I just use these. I build them up in layers. You know, it's like here's my tables. Here's my object names. How does that tie to the process chains? So with 2 sheets, I can describe an entire SAP BW system.
So that diagram you just saw me there, is that out of the BW system?
No, that's all hand generated. The BW system, the BW diagram will not even come close to giving you this level of detail. This is something you can actually do work from. The BW diagram, you know, you can use it as an input, but you're not going to be able to design a system from it. You won't really understand what it's doing. For example, I'll give an example. Here's an update rule. Let's see, here's the update rule.
Right.
Normally they're green. It kind of looks, in the system they're green. They kind of look like 2 triangles. But I colored this one red. And what the red means is, hey, there's some ABAP routines in there. There's a start routine. And if you're going to have some custom code in there, that's where you're going to have trouble. Now this line right here means that this ABAP routine, which is not something I would normally put in there, it's pulling in data from an external table. An object out here, which has master data in it. So it's not coming through the normal BW data flow. You know, it's somebody that program say, hey, I'm going to connect this table over here, and I'm going to pull something out. And if you're a BW developer, if you can't read ABAP, you don't even know what's going on. You don't know that someone's pulling in from a table. So you've lost control of your system.
The system, what you're saying then is the system generated diagram doesn't tell you even that there's an ABAP code there. And the naming convention then is actually helping you not only identify that it's there, but does it flow through then to the ABAP itself? Should it be having a naming convention?
Yeah. Anything related to your design
Mm-hmm.
has to be tied together by the naming convention. So if you have an ABAP routine, let's say talking about inventory, your inventory name that you're using for your tables and your objects and your rules and everything else, your ABAP routine is no different. It's part of that functional area. The name will tie in there. So if I'm looking through if I'm an SEA and I'm looking through all the ABAP programs,
Mm-hmm.
I know all I got to do is just go to look for this one that says IMV, global report, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there it is. That's
Okay.
one of those other random names in there that mean absolutely nothing to nobody except the original developer. You can forget about looking at those. Now, if you don't have that naming convention tying that together, you're going to have to go through each and every one of those ABAP programs to say, is this related to my project? No. And you have to spend time and effort and energy trying to figure out, is this related to what I'm doing on, or is this something unrelated? And all that takes time, and all that analysis costs the customer money.
Yeah, I would suppose it pays dividends too. Once it's implemented, then afterwards, because you're saving so much time, you should be able to actually invest even more in your BW system to get more value out of it.
Well, yeah, small issues are easier to remove from the system. So,
what do you think the impact then is when you have remote developers working like where you're at right now, who are probably coming back in on the system years later? What kind of extra costs are being incurred by customers just trying to overcome this system design? I don't know if you call it a flaw or simply low quality design work.
There's nothing like an on-site developer. Remote development costs the customer at least twice the development time. There's also a communication issue. Typically there's a 24-hour delay between when you ask your question versus when you get the question answered.
So you're not able to actually have a conversation like this, even with video, with your guy in India.
No. Most remote developers are in India. They're in a different time zone, 24 hours away, and it's true that they can be developing while you're asleep, but at the same time, if you need to talk to that person, you gotta stay up till 3 a.m.
Right. So
they gotta stay up till 3 a.m. I mean, it just slows everything down.
You wonder how the business decision then was made. It sounds like maybe the bean counters, the green eye shade crowd, simply didn't have a clue.
Well, I think initially what they were looking at is like, okay, we got some cheap labor here, but really what does it take to do engineering level high quality work? It takes a lot more than cheap labor. It takes 10 years to develop a capability that's sufficient to produce a good quality output.
Yeah, I think that brings up another question that you maybe talked about in the past. You mentioned once that what SAP teaches in a course, is far different than development knowledge required. Can you maybe go into that a little bit with some specifics, like what is it that you see that consultants just aren't coming out with?
Well, here's an example right here. SAP doesn't say, hey, you need a design.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you come out of engineering development,
right.
Software engineering. Make a design, review it. Does it make good sense? Does all the names tie together? Is this design going to help you or hurt you? Okay, now go build.
Right.
Okay, we've got an approved design. So SAP doesn't say, hey, you got to have a design. Say, here's what the button does. You figure out how to use it however way you can. Okay, that's the basic flaw. Training is good, but it doesn't. The part that's missing is here's how you be a software engineer. Here's how you do software development.
Right.
Here's how you do it in a structured way.
What